Amazing. And I just want to make sure. Okay, we are recording. Great. So just as a reminder or as an introduction for everybody, again, I'm really excited to be here today. If you are in this session and you're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry for more, one, I encourage you to sign up for all of our future webinars. This whole theme for this season is relationships and getting in right relationship to one another and our partners. But also we are going to have a closed community of practice space. We have 20 openings. We would love for you to join us, and we'll make sure to post the link in the chat later. Before we get into it, I just want to do some housekeeping. Closed captioning should be available if you click it in your bottom screen. Let us know if you have any issues accessing that. If you see that little swirl, it means it's one of my amazing PHT team members posting in the chat. This will help you be able to find those links. If you are not speaking, please turn off your mic in the large group. The reason why we don't auto unmic people or mute people is just to make sure that they have the option of turning it on. If you do have questions, rather than unmiking, we ask that you drop them in the chat and we'll make sure that our amazing facilitators can see it. I would love to see all of your faces being in community with one another. I know we can't be together IRL, but it would be great to see your face. So please turn on your camera. But if you can't, you are more than welcome to turn it off if that is more comfortable for you. And we all know that we're living in virtual settings. So your kids, creatures, pod, or housemates are more than welcome to make an appearance. Don't worry about it. And make sure you have something to take notes and process your thoughts, because we know that this content can be really just invigorating. Today, we are inviting all of you to listen deeply when in our space, embrace discomfort and notice tension in your body. Ask yourself why you might be feeling that discomfort or where that tension might be coming from. Don't forget to explore those feelings and take care of yourself. Like I was saying earlier, get a glass of water, stretch if you need to. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. These systems of injustice weren't built in a day and they won't be dismantled in one. And then I just invite you all to hold each other with compassion because we know that social justice work is in fact a practice, and it's something that we are all learning about and all getting better at day by day. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce our amazing presenters today. First, I'd love to introduce Akilah S. Wallace. She is the VP of Development at Big Thought. She's a passionate change agent, and she is the founder of Heritage Giving Fund. I had the honor of meeting her the other day. She has great energy. Y'all are going to love her. And then I'm really excited to introduce my colleague, Tyeshia Wilson, who I just have nothing but amazing things to say about Ty. She's the director of engagement at Philanthropy Together. Y'all probably know her face because she is out here representing us everywhere. She is the chair-elect of Heritage Giving Fund, and I am also really happy to call her my friend. And so with that, I am going to put myself on mute and pass it to these two amazing women for our session today.
Thank you, Kelsey. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Akilah Wallace, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you, and especially in community in partnership with my dear friend, colleague, and sister, Tyeshia Wilson. And I want to say thank you to Philanthropy Together, the entire team, for inviting me to participate in this really important conversation. And so, yes, I hope that it is casual and we get to, build new relationships with those of you who are joining us today. So briefly, here's kind of the agenda for our webinar today. So we've gone through our welcome and introductions. Would love for everyone, if you could begin to introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, what part of the country or world that you may be in, the name of your affiliated giving circle, if you're already associated with one, or any other affiliation that you'd like to be recognized for. So please drop that in the chat so we can get to know you. I will, share a little bit about, the story of Heritage Giving Fund, a Black women's giving circle based out of the North Texas region, as we'll go through some basic framework around, what is lived experience, the importance of centering community voice, and then we'll, go into where to instill lived experience in your work. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So
So.
A little bit about heritage. So in 2007, I said 17, Heritage Giving Fund was formalized as a donor advised fund, originally at the Dallas Women's Foundation, now the Texas Women's Foundation. It's important to note that, how we came to be was I was working at the foundation, and ultimately I had a lens, and I was able to see, that there weren't a lot of Black women who were being cultivated for engagement with, with the sector. I was in the community as a young professional with the Urban League, and often people were like, "So who do you work for? What is philanthropy? What is this even about? Foundations?" And so being able to be a voice in those spaces, but also recognizing, from a grant making standpoint that, I knew of a lot of smaller grassroots nonprofits that were led by Black women, and many of them just weren't aware of how to get in for funding opportunities. And so through that lens and through, the experience that I was able to see, not only as a staff person, but as a community member, I realized that there was a void. And so I reached out to two of my mentors, one, Dr. Francois Booker Drew, the other, Dr. Halima Leek Francis, both who have been volunteers with the foundations in the grant making committees in other capacities, to say, hey, what would you join me in really addressing, what we saw was not only a gap, but a tremendous opportunity to really impact inequities in philanthropy and in giving for Black women's work in the North Texas area, and that's specifically Dallas-Fort Worth region. So the mission of Heritage, when founded, was to encourage philanthropy in the Black community and to contribute in a strategic and meaningful way, and to bring a new source of funding to nonprofit organizations, specifically those that were serving majority Black women and girls, initially throughout North Texas, and then more recently, we've expanded our efforts to grow throughout the state. And as just you see a variety of pictures of our wonderful members. To date, since 2017, we are represented by active and inactive members who come along in this journey of about 67, almost 70 individual women. And collectively, we've awarded over $100,000 to 14 different organizations in the North Texas area. And so that's a little bit about us. But would like to jump in more about, how did our lived experiences show up in the work, but most importantly, why it's important.
Yeah, so, but before we even jump into the definitions and the framing, I do want to give credit to some of the resources that we pulled to gather our content today, especially like the United Way for Southern Eastern Michigan and Detroit Future City. Like, they had some good standard language that we felt was relevant and was very useful for our conversation today. We feel that just a lot of this lived experience, right, all this conversation is helpful to our collective efforts to just really help us all to advance equity within our giving circle. So what is lived experience? So by definition, here it is, lived experience describes the expertise that comes from a person's past or present experiences. This level of expertise provides context to a given issue. Now, people with lived experiences are also called context experts. And so lived experiences makes individuals distinctively equipped to understand the unique challenges of their communities, and therefore what is needed to make resources and processes more equitable. That's the standard definition. But what is most important here is, in addition to the definition, but why does it matter? Why do you care, right? And this perspective matters. Our lived experiences matter for so many reasons. The importance of lived experiences go deeper than demographics. It is truly about real boots on ground, ground knowledge about the work that the organization is doing from the perspective of the individuals, from the people that are living in the community and that it seeks to serve. So the truth is that only someone who has truly been through an experience knows the nuances and the complexities that's involved with dealing with them, right? And so finding solutions for us, finding solutions for lasting change requires a very robust and deep understanding of current challenges and opportunities, which can really be fully achieved through no other way than the ongoing input, collaboration, investment of the people that are closest to the issues. Like our friends at the Community Investment Network, they always say it, community knows what community needs. And so this is very important to us as funders, important for boards, policymakers. Our work as Giving Circle advocates to make sure that we are being diverse and that we are including the voices of the people who have been through the experiences that are different from each other as much as possible. That's why it's important. And this perspective, here in philanthropy, we got to speak truth to power, right? Because that's exactly what this space is for. Philanthropy really has not always gotten it right in terms of bringing in the voices of those with lived experiences. They just haven't. And also in terms of just investing and collaborating with those that are closest to the issue. As a matter of fact, the sector really has a very major diversity problem. Look at these statistics. 92% of CEOs of foundations, 89% of executives on foundation boards, 81% of management for financial services, 86% of venture capital investors. Y'all, these are big, juicy numbers, and they are all white. And so because of this diversity issue, and I'll just say that's a lot of funding. That's a lot of people that hold a lot of wealth and resources for the communities that need it. Now, this diversity issue is a problem for sure, because the resources are not going to where they need to go. They're not going to communities of colors, or there's some barriers that are getting in the way of the money flowing. And so the latest research actually shows that there's only about 8 to 9% of grant making from foundation that goes into communities of color. So in order for us to really affect long-term and sustainable movement toward equity and philanthropy, which is what we want, systemic issues we have to start with the issues like this: racism and philanthropy, saying it plain. Systemic issues must be acknowledged, and solutions must address the underlying biases and the power dynamics that we are really trying to break down through our work within Giving Circles. And so lived experience within the ecosystem of philanthropy, our work really needs to rest on the understanding of proximate philanthropy. And that is just saying that lived experiences is valuable. It's valuable expertise, as a matter of fact. And it is a key component of this equity work, is really us being intentional about valuing and incorporating community voice into our grant making. That has to happen. Otherwise, if we don't, then we're just perpetuating the very inequities and such that I just, the whiteness of philanthropy that I just talked about. And so, but by better centering our lived experience into not only in our grant making, but our operations as well. Akilah is going to talk a little bit about that. But if we center our lived experience into the operational and the grant making processes of philanthropy, then we are so equipped to strengthen community agency, y'all. We can really break down some power to disrupt some systems of oppression that really hinder people's capacity for reaching their economic prosperity. And that's very important in itself, because there is no way that we can even effectively center lived experiences in our work as Giving Circle leaders and members, and really as funders. There's no way that we can do that without first acknowledging and having a better and a deeper understanding of the systemic issues that those with lived experiences are facing. And so I've pulled some data here, some national, just some data about what's happening here in the U.S. on our home ground, y'all. There's over 121 million households in the US, over 51 million people who cannot afford basic necessities. Now I say basic necessities, that's childcare, that's food, that's transportation, that's medication for healthcare, smartphone, just basic necessities, including 16 million people that are living in poverty, right? And of 35, we have about 35 million people that were asset limited individuals, what they call like income constrained. The term is ALICE, out of the ALICE population. And COVID only disrupted that even more so. And so for that just it further enhanced the disparities and the systemic issues that we're trying to solve within our giving circles, which just only reduces the opportunity for advancement for so many of our neighbors and people. And so these inequities pretty much is a very complex and they're all very complex issues, right? But they're deeply rooted into legacies of oppression and discrimination that continues to permeate all facets of our society, right? And so we as funders across the world, we are doing it. We're working across to address these inequities through our grant making so that we can really reduce these barriers, especially the ones that we're seeing within philanthropy. And so, y'all, it's very important. We talk about these issues because these individuals, I was in these statistics at one point in my life, right? And so these are our members, these are your giving circle members, these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are our kids, teachers, frontline workers who really are out here. And so it's very important for us. Their experiences are so very relevant and they matter and they should be incorporated into all of our programming grants that are intended to serve them. And we can't even talk about, you talk about the national, the systemic issues that we see all across the US, but here, me and Akilah, we're both in Dallas. She's from Ohio, but been here quite some time. And so we are working by our work of heritage to address a lot of issues here in Dallas. And so as Brian Stevenson, I love him. He so accurately says, he said, if you really want to create change, then get proximate. So even a lot of us are working within our circle to address local issues. So being understanding about local issues matter. And so I pulled some data even from my own city. Dallas is a tale of two cities. We're segregated by race and income. More than 30% of Dallas children, they live in poverty, which is, higher than almost any other large urban city. Of these, over 43% of individuals and 38% of families in Dallas County are in the ALICE population. And Hispanic and Dallas County residents, they have definitely a different experience. I live in Southern Dallas where those communities reside mostly, and less than the median income is less than about 60% as opposed to our white and Asian residents. And so these issues all matter. Local issues matter because, again, it's understanding of these issues is really why, as Akilah mentioned, the story of heritage, it's the concept and the inception of why we even started our circle. And a lot of our members lived experience shaped exactly our program, our services, and things like that. A lot of our members experience shape exactly that their experience shape our program and services as we are seeking to address those issues even here in Dallas. So that being said, y'all, our goal as funders is bringing it all in. We got to understand what lived experience is. We have to understand what the data and getting rooted into the issues. But our goal as funders is very clear, right? And doing so, if we stick with our fundamental goal of grant making, is basically to support the ability of nonprofits and some amazing community-based organizations and individuals to make progress on complex issues. That is only going to happen if we better design our activities within our giving circles and form solutions that really close the systemic gaps and drive opportunities for us all to thrive. And so now is the time, right? We're having this conversation today with how we're going to do better and how we can kind of bring in some voices to better, to lift our efforts to become more equitable. And so now is the time for us, really, all of us, to redefine grant making approaches to better address the needs of our community members by incorporating those lived experiences and understanding the issues, and bringing all of that into how we award grants and also how we form our decision-making abilities around those processes. And so with that, I will, oh, not yet. Okay. And if we don't, I think this is good. Akilah made, she pointed out a good fact of, like, you know, if we do not approach this work through the lens and by bringing on those with lived experiences, then, you know, we would just be basically further harming ourselves and not investing resources into areas that really need it the most. We will be basically reinforcing racial inequities and also the racial philanthropy gap, because there's many gaps there. And also just, we wouldn't be able to truly address the needs of our community members, and then the long-term sustained recovery that we all are trying to do to make our communities more wholer, more just, more better. It's just going to be harder to recover from. And so where's the good news? Giving circles are the good news, right? We are very, very equipped to really center community of voice at this moment by centering in more new and diverse voices into our work. And as I mentioned, you know, again, our work really rests on the understanding that lived experience is valuable experience for the social change that we're trying to address. So as philanthropic leaders and as human beings living in all of these, you know, this very socio-political historic moment, we all know that, one, that the world is at this unique moment in the middle of COVID and attacks on democracy. We're looking for a way to rebuild in a better way. And the philanthropic sector is smack in the middle of this deep introspective, right? We're trying to think about ways and how we can really leverage civic engagement and shift power and break down privilege and drive impact and results. And all of that reporting is being challenged and changed, which is exciting. And our local community and social sector context is also really, really changing too, with these new issues kind of emerging. Some of them I address, and more community members are seeking to engage. And so as you really think about your own giving circle, I hope that you would think about your own strategic planning, your processes, your leadership change, and take a deep dive look into how you can kind of bring in more diverse voices and how you can embed equity into your work. And so with that, we have some guiding principles to get us started. We have some guiding principles that we really can lean into, y'all, to really help us to center lived experiences into our work. And so I will lift up that some of these are probably familiar with y'all. If you know anything about trust-based philanthropy, you have seen some of these, but they are very good principles and practices that really help us to better authentically engage in a more intentional way. And they are built and grounded and based off relationships and based off mutual respect and trust and valuing one another. And so there are 5 guiding principles pretty much. These principles can really, really help shape some of our events, some of our equity work, and really allow us to build more mutually accountable relationships. So the first one is just being more inclusive, right? Being genuinely inclusive. And I won't break down each one right now because Akilah really is going to unpack each of the principles in terms of operationally and how we can see them in our grant making as well. But the first one is being more inclusive. We know that works. Being more genuinely inclusive really requires a lot of listening, and we can do more of that, especially as it relates to bringing in the lived experiences of our members. Highlighting the strengths of community is a principle there. Being very and more open and transparent and responsive. Soliciting and acting on feedback is very, very important as it relates to obtaining input from those individuals with lived experience and acknowledging and affirming what they have to say. And also being aware of your own biases, before engaging and reducing the chance of groups and individuals who have been historically left out of funding and also just out of the conversation and the decision-making process. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Akilah so that we really can, in real time, place where we can instill these kind of 5 principles into our lived experiences and into the work of our giving circle.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ty. That was really powerful information that I hope everyone begins to really lean into as you're thinking about either your existing giving circle or a giving circle that you're thinking about founding. So how do we turn these principles into action? First, I just want to note that it's important to think about your origin story. And for me, it was about who do we want to model as a giving circle and who was our target audience for membership. So I want to acknowledge the amazing work and the history of those who were the founders and leaders of the Black Giving Circle movement well before Heritage came on the scene in 2017. There was intentional conversation and research that I did with Communities Action Network, sorry, CIN, I'm saying the wrong thing. CIN, as well as with Ebony Cooper Johnson, who's with the Young Black and Giving Back Institute. I went to her summit back in 2016. I had conversations with Valeda Forward with Black Philanthropy Month. So there was key individuals who I was introduced to, who I was able to learn and grow from. So I challenge y'all to think about who's within your community or within nationally or in other relationships that you can gain by way of this network and space to begin to model what others are doing. Because not everything, nothing's new under the sun, right? So connect with others, as well as think about your target audience. What was important, in the intention of Heritage is that our founding members, majority of them worked in the nonprofit sector directly as staff and or were already voices and leaders in the sector by way of their board or committee membership. So we already had a very specific perspective and lens around who we wanted to serve, how and why, based on our lived experience as leaders in the community and in the sector. Understanding that may be different for other given circles, but I just want to elevate how that uniqueness of how that contributed to the rest of how we formed and went about wanting to intentionally address racial inequities. So given circle, operations and grant making processes, understandably vary, circle to circle. And that's why the lived experience should be incorporated into both your organizational values and operations, as well as within grant making processes. Doing this, helps to ensure that community voice is central and integrated. And that shows up in the way in which you're co-designing. Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure. So yeah, in those 2 levels of engagement, again, there's the co-designing and the operations, the formalities of the who, what, where, when, and how, and why. And then also, the power sharing that's in the grant making processes of your given circle. That's going to vary in the ways in which some people may do, formal applications. Others may say submit videos or, and pictures and, or do a live interview. So that's going to be really important because both of these activities, involve people with lived experiences, generally those who are on the front lines of the work, and those who are more intimately, involved in the potential that you have as a given circle. Some proven engagement tactics, fall into these 2 key areas. Next slide, please. So, and looking at the co-design of the given circle, ensure that you're thinking about the ways that your members will be involved in the decision-making or your various systems and processes, and the way that they can be an asset to the community and those that you're seeking to partner with, whether that's through the intention of who you're hoping to provide funding to, and or who just want to see you as a community resource and as a funding partner, and how that can show up, and whether you're providing additional advising and consulting. And recognize that this is a two-way exchange, that does strengthen, peer trust and relationships, and contributes to sustainable activities and initiatives. Having community voices with lived experiences are and should be involved throughout the processes, and their input is integrated into your plans. And how this showed up for Heritage. Again, I noticed that many of our members were leaders in this nonprofit sector already. So in conversations with our programs team, and this was really, as we were coming out of 2019, they were, talking about, well, how can we be more intentional about elevating our expertise? Because we'd already gone through 1 year of grant making, and we saw the type of applications, the diversity of, organizations, many of those that were like, volunteer led, or, just, a staff of one, and in comparison to some other organizations that, may have had been more resourced. It's important to know that our processes was that not only did we focus on Black women-led nonprofits, their operating budgets couldn't exceed $500,000. So we wanted to be very intentional in addressing a population group within the sector who often were being overlooked, or just due to a variety of reasons didn't have access to more funding opportunities. But back to the membership. So what you're looking at here on this slide is that we had members, who worked in the sector of various levels, who said, hey, for programming, because we want to help strengthen the type of applications that we're seeing. And even outside of that, we want to strengthen the community as a whole, and specifically those nonprofits that were led by Black women. So we put together a series, and I mean, really, it was perfect timing in that it was really vital because we launched this in the beginning of 2020. It was started in 2020 and then went through all of 2021, where our different members brought their expertise. They curated their own sessions. It's like 1-hour webinars on different topics that we thought was important. So as you see, advice for startup nonprofits, conversations around how to access more money. And that was because of the type of membership that we had. And we were able to utilize their lived experience as people in the sector, and us recognizing that, working at nonprofits, that oftentimes the difference between those that are able to, to scale and build capacity, it really was about their ability to access funding. And even how we partnered with a couple other organizations last month for addressing fibroids, because we knew as Black women, that's a major issue or health concern for us. So we wanted to elevate our voice to get behind that particular issue. So these are just examples of the way that you think about your members. If you recognize that many of y'all work in, the financial, financial institutions, or is banking, is entrepreneurs, go, it doesn't have to be in the sector. Lean into what are your gifts? What resources and knowledge and information do you have access to that could be beneficial to the communities that you seek to serve and be in partnership with? So go think outside the box in the ways that you can really begin to build those relationships. So, and looking at, again, this principle of practice around operations. So going deeper. So membership base and the leadership structure, as you're, look internally to understand how your circle demographics reflect the communities you serve. Often, a given circle may start, I know for me, my initial conversations with those with people I had relationships with or that I knew already. And so started having one-on-ones and getting a feel for, what are your interests, and seeing whether or not there was an alignment for the cause that we wanted to have. For others, again, that's likely how your given circle was started as well. It's from those closest to you, but also take a look within yourself and the intentionality of what you believe you want your given circle's mission and vision to be. And what does diversity look like? And again, diversity could be based on race. It could be on age. We wanted to make sure that as we looked at us creating a pipeline of younger Black philanthropists and seeing themselves in this sector, we intentionally went and was having conversations with younger women. We knew many of the women who had been in the industry and have been serving in boards and were very prominent, and everyone knew about them, and they were doing tremendous work, and we respected it and admired them. But also for myself at the time, I was in my mid-30s, and I go, wait a minute, I don't see many of me or my age group or even younger, and how do we prepare them to take on the responsibility of ensuring that their voice is contributing to the community. So look at the diversity and ensure that that shows up in your leadership as well. Your mission statement and solidarity statement, make sure that you have that, but make a commitment incorporating lived experiences in your strategic priorities within your mission statement and or organizational values. We were very explicit in who we were wanting to prioritize, and that was Black women and Black girls. The focus area of the circle is equity and inclusion listed as a value of your given circle, as well as thinking about, are you focusing on issues that correspond with member lived experiences or interests? One, are you talking to each other? Are you surveying each other to get it, because it could vary for, of the interest, and y'all deciding this is what we want to focus on. So is it based on your membership, or if it's not about what the membership, has direct experiences with, and you say, well, we feel as though through the research or, we know in our particular community that, housing insecurity is an issue. Are you going and making sure that you're having conversations directly with those who are most impacted first, and building your decisions around your operations and systems based on what they said they want and need, not the assumptions that you may have about any one particular community. So again, this being genuinely inclusive requires listening with intention and attention, and ensuring that you're addressing concerns in ways that are relevant to the community, and in framing engagement in terms of shared values and opportunity, and cultivating a sense of belonging. Again, also looking at, highlight the strengths of the community organization rather than its needs. This process, can be known as asset mapping. Also a dear friend and, in our co-founder, Dr. François Booker Grew, who is an expert on social capital, looking at, how will your given circle help to unlock and activate the full potential of community spaces and community leaders and business partners that already exist, that can help support ongoing engagement for your given circle. And that shows up in your programs and events. It shows up in your marketing and branding. How are you, or making a decision, are you wanting to be an advocate? Are you going to be there to help celebrate and share the stories of your members, as well as your grantee partners on, your platforms? That's been a major piece for Heritage and how we've been able to grow and really build and establish our brand. Even when, for this year, 2022, we took a break. We had, our members have been directly impacted significantly, as everyone, by the pandemic, but being that we were majority Black women, there were other layers in the ways that trauma has showed up, the level of loss that many of us had experienced, that we took the year off. But what was able to sustain us was our ongoing marketing and branding, and making sure we continue to share the stories of our grantee partners, as well as our members who are continuing to push and do a lot of tremendous work in the community, and also in the community as a whole. And then partnerships. Establish genuine relationships with existing organizations who are doing the work as they relate to your focus area. Partner. Connect with them, learn, what are you doing? What are you discovering, are, opportunities that, we could be your given circle could be intentionally working to address. Again, not making assumptions, but having conversation and building relationships so that, again, the lived experiences of those who are closest to the pain, who are closest to the issues, who have various perspectives and expertise on the solutions, that their voices are being integrated into your work. And then again, increase coordination, communication and engagement with those community-based organizations. So another key element to, this work is power sharing. How does that show up in your Giving Circle decision-making work? And that includes, collaborating, agenda setting, and decision-making. Within our Giving Circle, we'll be honest, there was some moments where, we had our founding officers, and as much as we were like, hey, we want everybody to be included in the decision-making around what we do, how we do it, what our programming looks like, and we had developed various committees, we realized that, there were some members who were looking to us to provide that level of guidance, because we were trying to, be a little bit, to be equitable in the power sharing, while others were kind of looking to us to like lead in a certain way. So to have evaluations around what does power look like within your Giving Circle. As well as how that shows up in the dynamic between you and the community that you're working directly with.
And Keely, I'm gonna jump in here real quick on this one, because I think when we think about what does power sharing look like, there are two Giving Circles that are doing really, really awesome work in terms of setting the standard for that. One of them is the Lunar Project. The Lunar Project is a community building and investment circle for Asian Americans to support the movement for Black and Indigenous led liberation. And so they do this primarily through their transformational learning and building, giving. Welcome, Sharmila. They do this through their 12-week. They have like a 12-week cohort programming where they, a lot of the Asian American members of theirs, they get together, they learn about race and racism, and they pull their resources. They have a very rich solidarity funding framework that really embrace the ways in which Asian American and Black and Indigenous community histories and struggles are interconnected. It's just, I really like the Lunar Project, and I encourage y'all to check them out, because they just, they're getting it right in terms of transformational solidarity and just power sharing. And then the other circle is Rad Fund. Rad Fund is doing amazing work as well. They're a Giving Circle based in Brooklyn, and they're a group of friends that are united in love of dancing and commitment to liberation. And they support those directly affected by the threats and oppressions that they work to correct. And so they are, look at the picture, just a lot of their work and such is really rooted, again, same thing, similar to Lunar, in solidarity and standing firm and bringing in the lived experiences of their communities that don't look like them, but they stand in solidarity. And I just think that they're both just amazing, really cool Giving Circles that are doing the work of power sharing. Sorry, Akilah, I'll throw it back to you.
Not a problem. No, that's perfectly fine. So centering community voice throughout the grant making process, creates, this opportunity, to combat power imbalances among foundations and nonprofits and people with lived experience. And here you'll see some quotes, by way of a resource from the United Way that really, speaks to like how people are, those of us on the funding side are, beginning to challenge ourselves and say, how am I going about this? Is this what is best for the community that I seek to serve? Is it what's best for us and our membership? Does it allow us to be truth tellers and to be, true to ourselves and, and ultimately, to the goals that we, hope to reach by way of our collective giving and impact. This, again, this shift in grant making, shares power with context experts, giving them agency to change systems and produce more equitable outcomes in their community. As funders, Giving Circles should instill lived experience throughout the entire grant making process, which includes, 3 primary stages, your pre-grant work, your grant making, and then also the post-grant work and also evaluation, self-evaluation, as well as the evaluation of the organizations and the impact of your giving to them. And at each of these stages, there's an opportunity to lean into the guiding principles of incorporating, your lived experiences as members and those who are a part of the organizations that you're serving, but which can inform outcomes, funding priorities, distribution plans, and overall impacts. So again, leaning more into the grant making and how does this show up? So how do we turn these principles into action on the grant making side? So make sure that you're, spending time in the community that you're seeking to serve and establishing true, genuine, authentic relationships and bridging connections. It isn't right for you to say, hey, I want to, we want to address, human trafficking, but you haven't taken the time to, one, do your research, but also align with those who may have, had direct experiences. Understanding, the laws and policies that may be in your region. We're learning, here in the state of Texas, they're, fighting to ensure that, I believe there may be some recent changes to ensure that if a woman is arrested, for human trafficking, well, one, that they don't get arrested for human trafficking, right? That they recognize that they're the victim and that they're not out here, intentionally, wanting to break the law, that, they're in a situation where it's a shift in power and that they're not in control. And so they shouldn't be penalized for that. They are the ones who need to be rescued and not continue to be treated as a victim. But it's knowing and understanding that, taking the time to, go and connect with the justice system, understanding how this particular issue shows up within that pipeline, what type of policies exist locally and statewide. But it takes that level of building relationships and connections across a variety of sectors to be able to do that. So again, do your research, call, reach out to organizations and leaders, in the community, get to know the executive directors of organizations that, you're inquiring about or, have an interest in getting a better understanding of, not only the work that they do, but how they go about doing that work. And especially with those that are smaller and newer. I just want to elevate, how to be, that you need to be sensitive about how you go about doing that though, because often, again, you're in a power dynamic where you're seen as the funder. So if you're, if and when you're reaching out, there may be, an assumption that, oh, okay, you're reaching out because there's a stronger likelihood that I'm going to be considered for funding. So just be, aware of that and be mindful of the way in which you do have that level of engagement, as well as the way in which it doesn't appear as though you're coming to extract information and resources from those entities, and then they never hear from you again. So again, make sure it's about, building relationship and intentionality and finding ways to, whether it's through potential funding or some other outlet that you can support them, maybe it's helping to leverage and connecting them to other resources, that you keep that in mind in that power dynamic. And again, you want to own the work of uncovering and addressing your biases and proactively, meet people where they are rather than expecting them to always come to you. That's self-explanatory, as well as embrace humility and solidarity. And I just want to note this, as you're looking at applications, sometimes it comes up that some people can write much better than others, or they've been able to pay, a grant writer, a really established grant writer, or they have a development person on staff in comparison to, a one-person show and it's a volunteer. Be very intentional about thinking about how you are mindful of that in whatever your grant making application process is, and making the determinations around who is considered to be, eligible to receive funding from you. Next. All right. So kind of on that post grant making cycle, or a part of the cycle, have an inclusive and diverse review committee that includes people with lived experience. Examine and diversify your sourcing channels, reach out to racial equity experts, scan conference attendees and use resources, created by movement organizations. Engage people with lived experience in the development of your grant opportunities. And hopefully that shows up by way of your membership. Evaluate your grant principles or pipelines, to ensure that unfamiliar or grassroots groups have access. So again, don't make the excuse, well, I don't know where they're at. Figure it out, connect with other BIPOC, business, organizations, the Black MBAs, the Urban League, NAACP. There's so many different options in a variety of communities. Reach out, build relationships with them, and then they can be continue to be resources for you as well as offer responsive and adaptive non-monetary support as well. All right, we're getting close here to the end. So, you know, again, want to ensure that there's openness, transparency, and responsiveness. Again, on the back end of your funding, you know, pay attention to who is receiving your funds most often, track your data, have policies in place, you know, regarding, you know, how many times a certain organization, you know, can qualify to, you know, to get recurring funding, because you want to ensure that equity shows up in the ways that certain groups don't, you know, they may be, you know, yes, their application is always strong. It's great, wonderful leadership, but ultimately, how are you reducing the opportunity for someone else to get the resources from you that could leverage them and help them to grow and increase their ability to access and to improve in their systems and operations. You know, treat your grantees, you know, treating your grantees of colors as partners will help empower them to do their best work. If your grantees are not meeting targets, you know, ask questions to understand why, be clear about your expectations, and give feedback with time to resolve it. That's a key piece, and give them time to possibly resolve it. As well as assess, you know, previous granting efforts to identify gaps and improve your grant making. We're doing that at Heritage. You know, we recognize that, you know, one particular part of our process when we were doing kind of like our voting day, you know, how there was some inequities in the way that if, you know, if some members, you know, who went and did site visits, if they weren't present on voting day, but they gave like their pre-information and scoring information. But when it came down to those who were in person, and we were kind of vying for who we really wanted to push and elevate, you know, to ensure they got the awarding, there was an inequity for those who, if they weren't physically there to go hard for their organization, then it was a power dynamic. So we're working on how do we address that. So these are just different ways to, you know, ensure that from all elements of your grant making that you are embodying the lived experiences and working to address inequities. Ms. Tyeshia.
Yes, all of the things, y'all. We sure hope this has been helpful to you, this conversation. Akilah and I, we're gonna be back for round 2. And we probably, how much time we have, Kelsey? Well, we have about 4 minutes left. And so I don't think that we'll have time for a Q&A, but what I'll do is I'm going to drop this Jamboard. Hopefully y'all are familiar with a Jamboard. I'm gonna drop it in the chat. And what we want y'all to do, first off, come back in December. And that's going to be our next session on December 1st, sorry. I forgot the swiggle, Kelsey, don't kill me, but there is the Jamboard, y'all. Please, what Akilah and I want to do for part 2 of this conversation is to workshop it. We really want to hear from y'all. So based off, you know, what we shared today and just, you know, your own heart and what popped out to you, if you have any questions or even just not even a question, a comment, please drop it in a Jamboard for us, because then we are going to use that as a springboard for our conversation, for part 2 of our conversation, which we really want to dig a little bit deeper into more actionable steps and, you know, ways forward, and how we can kind of, again, better embed our community voices and lived experiences of others into our work. And so join us on Thursday, December 1st. Me and Akilah will be back in the space. And then I did want to lift up this last piece. Can you go to the slide, Kelsey, with the additional resources? Yep. These are some resources, y'all. So if you have not checked out our CEO's TED Talk on giving circles, please do. It's just a source of inspiration and just it's just amazing. And then for a book read is Empowering Charity, A New Narrative of Philanthropy. That is a book that was authored by one of our founding members, Dr. Francois Booker Drew. And it's just amazing. It's amazing read. It's available on Amazon. Kelsey, thank you. All the resources are linked in the chat. And then the last piece is Akilah and I are both members of this cohort that's part of the Truth and Racial Healing and Transformational group, which is a national organization, right, Akilah? They're a national organization, but they have like locations in each city, you know, in different cities. They have one here in Dallas, but they are doing amazing racial equity training work, resources, all of the things. And so click on the link, it's in the chat. And hopefully you all will just lean into these additional resources until we see y'all again in December. And so with that, we just want to thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I see your faces now. It's good when the PowerPoint comes off, because then we can see y'all faces and really be in community. Precious and Susan and Charnel and Jill and Betsy and all of y'all. Thank you, Sarah. All of y'all beautiful, amazing philanthropists. We really appreciate our time spending with you all today, and encourage you all to take care of yourself, love on one another, and stay with your foot on the gas in this work as we disrupt philanthropy in an amazing, collective, people-powered way, and really bring in more equity into this space. So y'all take care, and we'll see y'all in December.
Ty and Akilah, thank you all for joining us. Please add those comments in the Jamboard. They will be linked back in for next session, and we will be sharing out that Jamboard in our follow-up email, along with how to sign up for the community of practice. It was so great to see all of these new faces and some of our returners. And if you have other ideas for content you'd like to see in our Equity and Justice series, please let me know. And then shameless plug, the groups that Ty called out, both Rad Fund and Lunar Project, are presenting in this series. So next month, Seiji, who is a member of Rad Fund, will be talking about getting in right relationship with movement orgs. And later we'll have the Lunar Project talking about getting down with solidarity. So make sure you don't miss those and sign up for the rest of the other workshops. Love seeing you all. It's 4:30. Go grab some water, go stretch, go take a walk. And thank you all for joining us today.
Bye, y'all.